Good morning, everyone, and I'm honored today to present on behalf of the National Economic and Development Authority the topic we have at hand, which is the Philippine energy sector, investment, and its role in economic development. So, right now, this invitation was handed over to our unit director, but unfortunately, our bosses are still in holdover capacity right now, so it was delegated to us. So the outline of my presentation is as follows. So the energy and economic development, its relationship and how they drive and how they affect each other. And the second portion is about the energy sector in the Philippines, the natural gas scenario in the Philippines as envisioned, and investment opportunities in the energy sector, as well as I'll be mentioning recent pronouncements during the most recent State of the Nation address on how natural gas figures into the overall development policy and direction of the state. So here again is a representation of those. So energy and economic development, the relationship, energy in the Philippines, and investment opportunities in the energy sector. So from the last SONA that we heard from our current president, Marcos, to quote, he said, another fundamental requirement for growth and increased employment will be the availability of cheap, reliable energy. This even comes under the category of ease of doing business. If we are to attract investors, both local and foreign, to set up shop here in the Philippines, so these are figures relating to the relationship of economic development and energy consumption. So as you can see, we've highlighted the trend line for GDP per unit use of energy, and well, the trend line is not that clear from the projector, but it's encircled with a red oval. So it's a pretty much straight line, which means to show that there is a proportional growth in energy consumption as well as economic development. So as you can see, the other figures, electric power consumption per capita increases, and energy use also increases, and energy production increases. So that ratio just shows that for every GDP, every increase in GDP, there's an increase in energy, or every increase in energy consumption, there is an increase in GDP. Then shown on the slide is the share of shows the GDP by industrial origin at current market prices, and the share of electricity, gas, steam, and air conditioning supplies. So it shows that, well, the share of electricity, gas, steam, and air conditioning supply is relatively small relative to the entire GDP consumption. But from what you can see, the behavior is pretty much the same, which validates earlier data that shows that GDP growth and energy consumption and production are pretty much proportional to each other. Then to further support that, we have certain studies that have been conducted by scholars. And the first one is a study conducted by Borozen, and it narrates the evidence from Croatia, which is from the period from 1992 to 2010, shows that during that period, total energy consumption is an important component determining economic growth in Croatia, and that energy conservation policy should be formulated and implemented wisely. So the second paper that is cited, as you can see on the screen, but I think it's not that clear. It's a joint paper by Rahman, Rana, and Barua, and entitled The Drivers of Economic Growth in South Asia, Evidence from a Dynamic System GMM Approach from the period 1975 to 2016. So this was the design method under this study was a panel corrected standard error approach and one-step system, generalized method of moments. And the findings of this study will show that both the static and dynamic estimations indicate that energy use, gross capital formation, and remittances are the main drivers of economic growth in South Asian countries. The effects of all these variables are positive and significant. The extent of the effect of energy use is much higher than that of other two variables on the economic growth. A 1% increase in the growth of energy consumption can expedite the gross domestic product growth by approximately 3% in South Asia. However, the key variables such as trade, government expenditure, and foreign direct investments demonstrate no significant effect. So a third study that we've cited for this occasion is a study by Farani and Raman once again. So the purpose of this study is to investigate the relationship between gas consumption and economic growth of France. So this is more in line with our topic for today, which is natural gas. And the findings of this study shows that variables are co-integrated for the long run relationship. They also indicate that natural gas consumption exports, capital, and labor are contributing factors to economic growth in France. The causality analysis indicates that feedback hypothesis is validated between gas consumption and economic growth. The bidirectional causality is also found between exports and economic growth, gas consumption, and exports and capital and gas consumption. The implications of this research show that the feedback hypothesis between gas consumption and economic growth implies that the adoption of energy conservation policies should be discouraged. Rather, gas consumption and economic growth policies should be jointly implemented. So moving on to the next main part of this presentation, it pertains to the energy sector in the Philippines, and subsections of this part are the natural gas scenario in the Philippines and investment opportunities in the energy sector. So basically, this is for the power sector. So the Philippines power sector has three major sections, which is first is generation, which is generally a competitive industry. Then there's transmission and distribution, which are, well, pretty much natural monopolies by their physical nature. So generation is where, within the power sector, generation is where natural gas can come in. And natural gas can be used to fire or as fuel for the different power plants that generate electricities that are transmitted through the transmission network and the distribution networks. So generation is the production of electricity by a company, and transmission is using high voltage backbone system to deliver that electricity. The next is the distribution system, which is the conveyance of electric power by distribution utility through its own distribution system. So going back to the SONA that we just heard from our president, quoting, in the move to lowering our carbon footprint, our advancement to renewables will have a lead time. In the interim, natural gas will hold the key. So here in this case, shown in this table, is the different shares of the different fuel types in power generation. So natural gas accounts for 13.4% of installed capacity, which translates to 14.4% of dependable capacity. So installed capacity is the nameplate capacity, which is the full load continuous gross capacity of a unit under specified conditions, as calculated from the electric generator nameplate based on the rated power factor. So dependable capacity is maximum capacity when modified for ambient limitations for a specified period of time, such as a month or a season. So from this table, you can see that although the installed capacity of natural gas is lower than its percent share in the dependable capacity, it just shows that compared to some other types of fuels for power generation, the dependable capacity of natural gas tends to be higher. So this is a pie chart showing the table that I showed earlier. And natural gas is somewhere in the green there. And shown on screen is the installed generating capacity in the Philippines. That is from 2003 to 2020. So it shows that natural gas is still not that predominant. It's not that heavily used in terms of generating capacities. However, this is the outlook of within the Philippine Energy Plan, 2020 to 2014. So at least one of the scenarios envisioned in the PEP is that the share of natural gas is projected to surpass coal as a major fuel for power generation from 20% in 2020 to 40% by 2014. So one of the key factors to this projections or this vision or expectation is that the flexibility of its fuel to support the higher penetration of renewables in the generation mix, specifically solar and wind. However, with the depletion of the natural gas from the Malampaya gas field, the country needs to import liquefied natural gas to meet its fuel requirements. LNG is seen to come in starting 2020 as assumed in this outlook through the completion and commercial operation of two LNG import terminals composed of a floating storage and regasification unit terminal and onshore regasification terminal with floating storage unit terminals. So this is the scenario for what is currently happening in terms of the natural gas supply in the Philippines. So natural gas supply decreases at an average rate of 0.8% a year, and from in 2020 it was 3.5 MTOE to a projected 2.80 MTOE in 2014. So the Malampaya oil field has been operating since 2001 to fuel the natural gas power plants. Its pressure started to decline, which corresponded to a decrease in production output from 370 million MMSCF in 2021, and this is foreseen to drop to 250 in 2024. So investment opportunities in LNG terminal development. So these were some of the regasification units I mentioned earlier. So currently what we have on screen are those different projects and the different storage units that are able to support the natural gas industry and their different proponents, their locations, their capacities, and their costs. Of course, outside of physical infrastructure, in physical capital investments, there are also policies. They shape the direction, they guide the direction of the energy sector, the power sector. So these are the implemented policies in the energy sector which contribute to its development. So Energy Investment Coordinating Council, which harmonizes all the energy investments. And there's Republic Act 11032, or the Ease of Doing Business. And the intention of this Republic Act is to make processing of permits of the different government agencies faster and smoother. Then RA 11234, or the Energy Virtual One-Stop Shop, it has the similar intentions as the Ease of Doing Business Act, but this pertains specifically to the energy sector. And Administrative Order number 23. This is intended to eliminate overregulation to promote efficiency of government processes issued in 2020. And Joint Memorandum Circular 2020-01 or the LGU Energy Code issued on April 30 by DOE and the Department of Interior and Local Government. So these are different initiatives promoting the natural gas sector. So House Bill 3031, or the Downstream Natural Gas Industry Development Act, and the LNG Investors Guide in the Philippines, how to tap into the world's LNG market. Then GPGP's financial and technical recommendations for the review of applications, and market profiling with the emphasis on the use of LNG to power economic zones. Then other means to support LNG and other energy and power related investments are financial incentives to streamline investment initiatives for eligible companies. And one such is Executive Order number 226, or the Omnibus Investment Code of 1987, which provides for income tax holidays, tax credits, taxes on imported parts. Then other initiatives on promoting the natural gas sector, a memorandum of understanding between the Philippine National Oil Company and the New Fortress Energy was signed in October 14, 2020, that aims to identify potential opportunities and prospective locations for the development of LNG facilities. And there have been 61 opportunities and prospective locations for the development of LNG facilities, and it bridges the downstream natural gas industry's value chain. And once again, before I end my presentation, so this is another pronouncement from the most recent SONA, and the president of the country said that, and I quote, "We will provide investment incentives by clarifying the uncertain policy in upstream gas, particularly in the area close to Malampaya. This requires clarification of the processes and review of the service contract policy." And further to this statement, one of the key priority legislations of the current administration is the enactment of an enabling law for the natural gas industry. So this enabling law seeks to foster the development of the midstream natural gas industry in a bid to strengthen Philippine energy security by diversifying the country's primary sources of energy and promoting the role of natural gas as a complementary fuel to variable renewable energy. And with that, thank you for your attention.